is on track for its longest heat wave in nearly a decade. Adam Del Roso's with us, senior meteorologist at AccuWeather. Sticking around for how much longer, Adam?
Well, for some of us, right into next week. So I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record talking about all of the records broken amid this ongoing heat wave. So far this month across the country, more than 300 records have been broken here. The worst of the heat today across the Central Plains into the Midwest, with high temperatures back up into the triple digits for cities like Wichita and Colby, Kansas. Heat advisories in effect for us for the weekend into early next week, even across the 95 corridor as you get around Philadelphia, New York, Boston. Heat advisories for us as well. We got into the mid-90s today, and it's only going to get hotter as we head through our Saturday and Sunday. The other element is the humidity, the moisture in the air. We've got dew points up into the 60s and 70s, and when numbers are that high, when your body tries to sweat, normally it cools by evaporating that moisture, but whenever there's so much moisture in the air, that sweat has nowhere to go. So our body temperatures stay up, and that's how it becomes dangerous and deadly, like we've already seen. This ridge staying in place across the desert southwest, but watch what happens to the jet stream. That takes a northward bump into Canada across the northeast, and so that heat is allowed to spread eastward. The hottest day coming on Sunday, but even tomorrow, places like Louisville getting up to 100, 91 in Hotlanta, New York City, mid-90s for us with AccuWeather real field temperatures even hotter than that. I mentioned already, Sunday going to be even worse along the 95 corridor across the southern and central plains into the west coast. AccuWeather real field temperatures 100 or greater, more than 160 million impacted here with this heat. Look at these temperatures for Sunday afternoon. Newark, New Jersey, 105. Philly expecting to get up to 100. That would be the first time in 10 years that we've been that hot. Both of those would shatter the daily record.
into tactical systems with a range greater than that of the Soviet Tochka-U or the Ukrainian Vilka MLRS. In the future, MLRSs will also acquire even more impressive smart missiles, Precision Strike Missile. The series of GPS-guided missiles will replace ATACMS from 2024. These are equipped with a new area warhead and can strike the enemy at a distance of 37.2 to 310 miles. But to date, PRSM missiles are still in the initial production stage. The first batch of 110 missiles is set to be transferred to the U.S. military within a year, with approval planned to take place in 2023. Although apparently deliveries of the M270 to Ukraine have already started. Not too long ago, members of the armed forces of Ukraine shared a photo with the MLRS M270 in it. What we most likely saw in the photo was 2 of the 3 MLRS transferred by the UK. Given that Britain has its own MLRS modification, AFU soldiers might possibly acquire a version of the M270B1, similar to the M270A1, but with improved crew protection armor. According to the agreements between Norway and Britain, the latter took on transferring the GPS-enhanced M270 to Ukraine in return for upgrading the decommissioned Norwegian MLRS. Additionally, let's not forget about the recent promise of Germany to supply its own versions of the M270, the Mars 2 MLRS-E. The German version of the MLRS can fire up to 12 unguided 230mm rockets per minute, and the European Fire Control System integrated into the Incendiary, the M142 HIMARS, is a lightweight MLRS developed in the late 1990s for the U.S. Army. Unlike the MLRS, the HIMARS can accommodate only 1 capsule with 6 GMLRS, 2 PRSM, or 1 ATACMS missiles mounted on a 5-ton truck of a new family of medium tactical vehicles. Simply put, this system's force is about 50% of the M270. However, in return, HIMARS offers high mobility, which today just fits perfectly into Ukrainian artillery firing on the principle of maneuver, fire, maneuver. Due to its modest dimensions, the M142 can be transported using the Lockheed C-130 Hercules. Furthermore, the system's short deployment time and quick firing of volleys allows one to quickly deploy it long before the enemy even thinks about striking back. On May 31, 2022, the White House announced the delivery of 4 M142 HIMARS with M31 GMLRS missiles for training purposes, with shipments increasing as hostilities develop. By June 23, the first HIMARS arrived in Ukraine. Since then, warehouses with weapons for the Russian invaders in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions can be seen from space, now that they're being lit up. Artillerymen of the armed forces of Ukraine have demonstrated high accuracy, fleeing in a panic. The most popular MLRS in service with the ground forces of Ukraine are the BM-30 Smerch, of which the Ukraine has about 81, and the BM-27 Uragan, of which there are about 70 units. In fact, the Smerch is a continuation of the Uragan, with a key difference in the diameter of the ammunition used and the effective range. So while the maximum range of the BM-27 missiles is about 43 miles, the BM-30 goes out to about 74.5 miles. As for the differences in the shells used by the Soviet MLRS, the Uragan system is loaded with 220mm rockets launched from 16 tubes installed in the rear of the chassis. With the Smerch, we're talking about 12 launch tubes with 300mm rockets inside. In addition to Soviet copies, one should also not discount Ukraine's own developments, such as Vilka and Vilka-M. For the first time ever, this complex came to be known in January of 2016, and the first test fires were carried out in March of that same year. 3 years later, missiles were launched from the upgraded Vilka-M complex, which had improved fuel energy, improved control and navigation systems, and also a greater effective range, up to 80 miles. In just 48 seconds, the Vilka can fire a full salvo of 12 missiles capable of hitting a target at a distance of 43.5 to 125.5 miles. Although the latest version of the Vilka M2 missiles, which have an operating range of more than 120 miles, is still at the testing range and is not currently in operations with the armed forces of Ukraine. The Vilka missile's main feature is that their flight is corrected using 90 impulse engines located in several rows outside the gun. A multiple launch rocket system is a complex, consisting of a launcher with multiple charges, projectiles, and other auxiliary components, such as transport or transport loading vehicles and such. The primary purpose of such guns is to combat armored vehicles and infantry dispersed over a large area, as well as the destruction of strategic enemy infrastructure like an airstrip. Although there are several types of MLRS, modular or container multiple launch rocket systems are rightfully considered the most powerful. These are able to shoot several types of shells at once, are easier to upgrade, and their reloading takes 10 times less time than their tubular predecessors. Among this type, the most advanced MLRS today are the American M142 HIMARS and its big brother, the M270 MLRS. Let's start with the latter, since it was this one that became the cornerstone of this family of weapons. The U.S. began actively looking at the MLRS after the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when they were assessing the effectiveness of the Israeli army destroying enemy forces via MLRSs. Realizing that in the event of a large-scale war in Europe, such weapons would play an important role, the U.S. Army had, by 1974, formulated requirements for a new rocket launcher called the General Support Rocket System, or GSRS. The project piqued the interest of America's allies in the NATO bloc, among other entities, since they had already tried to previously create such weapons. By joining forces, the result of many hours of work from specialists all over the world was not long in coming. Boeing and Vought Aerospace were overall responsible for the development of the MLRS. Production models first appeared in 1982, and the initial battery of operational M270s was formed just a year later.